You are alone in a dark field. The early morning wind blows through the stones, and there on the horizon, a giant nearly 3 meters tall raises his sword, laughing in your face. Your heart races, your hands tremble, everything in you screams, "Run!" Now freeze that image and answer quickly. When was the last time you felt exactly like that? Small, unprepared, facing a problem that seemed impossible. If that scene has been yours, press the internal play button, because the story that begins now was written for people like us, fragile but determined to trust when the only alternative is to faint with fear. Bethlehem, dry hills, the smell of sheep. While most boys dream of wielding a sword, David holds a staff and a harp. He doesn't know it, but every note he draws from the strings is tuning the soul of a future king. When the prophet Samuel knocks on Jesse's door, everyone expects the chosen one to be Eliab, tall, with broad shoulders and a warrior's face. God, however, whispers, "I see the heart." Even David doesn't understand what happened. He returns to the pasture with oil in his hair and the same tiring work, but something in him has changed. The presence of the Lord clings like a perfume that never fades. Fast forward a few months. In Saul's palace, music is medicine for a tormented king. Someone remembers a talented harpist, that shepherd from Bethlehem, and David is summoned. When his fingers touch the strings, the fog in Saul's eyes dissipates. The young man is appointed as a shield-bearer and begins to breathe the air of the court, without imagining that friendships and enmities will be born there that will change his destiny. Quick cut to the Elah Valley. 2 armies have faced each other for 40 days. Goliath from Gath appears every morning wearing almost 60 kilograms of bronze, a spear as thick as a beam, and his voice echoes on the slopes. "Send someone to fight me!" No soldier of Saul takes a step. On this day, David arrives bringing bread and cheese for his brothers. He hears the challenge, feels his face burn with indignation, and exclaims, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should insult the army of the living God?" Wait a second and let that question hit you. Who or what is insulting your faith today? David refuses Saul's armor, takes 5 smooth stones, runs towards the giant and releases his sling. The impact on Goliath's forehead sounds like thunder. The colossus falls and the dust rises, and the impossible happens. In a matter of minutes, the anonymous shepherd becomes a national hero. The women compose a chorus. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Each note of the choir pokes at the king's ego and transforms admiration into toxic jealousy. Saul throws a spear, David dodges twice. The court ceases to be a refuge and becomes a trap. At this point, pause and breathe. Have you noticed how compliments can turn into knives when they fall on insecure ears? Saul does not deal well with the success of others, and David responds to envy with loyalty. He plays, serves, and fights for the same king who wants to kill him. But the tension grows when Saul promises his daughter Michal in exchange for 100 Philistine foreskins, and David brings 200. The plan fails, the fury increases, and the young man needs to flee. The desert phase begins. Cave of Adullam, forest of Hereth, rocks of En-Gedi. People in debt, distressed and fugitive join David. In a short time, he leads 400 men. There a group is born that the Bible calls mighty warriors. God likes to transform scrap into a shock troop. Between ambushes and escapes, David has 2 chances to kill Saul, one in a cave, the other in the camp, and spares his enemy. "I will not lift my hand against the Lord's anointed." Hold that scene. A man with reason to take revenge chooses to honor authority. That is strength, not weakness. Years drag on. Saul, obsessed, dies in a battle against the Philistines. David mourns, does not celebrate, and then asks God what to do. The answer, go up to Hebron. There, at the age of 30, he is anointed king of Judah. 7 years later, all the tribes surrender. "We are your own flesh and blood." David finally governs all of Israel. His first conquest as unified king is Jerusalem, a neutral city between north and south. He takes the Jebusite fortress, renames it the City of David, and decides to bring the Ark of the Covenant there. The procession is a celebration, but also a lesson in reverence. Uzzah touches the ark and falls dead. David halts the project for 3 months until he understands that God's holiness does not allow shortcuts. When the ark finally enters Jerusalem, the king dances with force, dressed in simple linen. Michael criticizes him, and David replies, "I will become even more undignified than this." True worship does not always fit royal etiquette. We have reached the climax. The kingdom prospers, borders expand, and tributes arrive. Then explodes the chapter that no one would like to write. One afternoon, David stays home while the army wars. From the terrace, he sees Bathsheba bathing. The look turns to desire, which transforms into adultery and then into pregnancy. To cover it up, David tries to manipulate Uriah, but fails and sends him to the front of the battle. Uriah falls. David takes Bathsheba as his wife. Everything seems resolved until the prophet Nathan arrives with the parable of the stolen little lamb. "You are that man." David tears his heart. "I have sinned against the Lord." He writes Psalm 51, a model of repentance. God forgives, but the consequences arrive. The son dies, and the sword does not depart from the king's house. Following years bring family drama. Amnon violates Tamar. Absalom kills Amnon, flees, returns, steals the heart of the people, and plots a coup. David, again a fugitive, goes up the Mount of Olives weeping, barefoot. Absalom dies hanging by his hair. David cries out, "My son, my son!" He returns to the throne, marked by scars that will accompany him into old age. Near the end, David does something great and something disastrous. Great. He prepares tons of gold, silver, wood, and plans for Solomon to build the temple. Disastrous. He orders a census of the people out of military pride. When he realizes his mistake, he chooses to fall into the hands of God. A plague sweeps through Israel, but is stopped in a field belonging to Araunah the Jebusite. We have reached the final scene. The king, already weak, calls Solomon, "Be strong, act like a man, and keep the commands of the Lord." Then he praises God, "Yours is the power, the glory, and the majesty." He closes his eyes, rests. 40 years of reign, a legacy that echoes to this day. Now it's your turn to enter the story. Which part of David resonated with you? Maybe you are in the anonymous fields, thinking nothing relevant happens. God is training your heart. Maybe you face a Goliath. Remember that a stone thrown by faith is enough. Maybe you flee from a persecuting Saul. Don't lose your integrity. Maybe you have fallen like David with Bathsheba. Accept the consequences and start over. Or maybe you are tired, feeling the weight of many years. There is still time to prepare resources for the next generation. Take paper and pen. Write down 3 giants that mock you today. Next to them, note the stone that God has already placed in your hands. A gift, a contact, a verse, a step of courage. Commit to throwing that stone this week. Then choose a Psalm of David. It could be Psalm 23, Psalm 27, or Psalm 51, and pray it aloud every day for the next 7 days. Come back and tell us what has changed. And remember, the promise made to David reaches its climax in Jesus, the Son of David, who conquered the greatest of giants, sin, not with a sword, but with a cross. In him, our small stone becomes an avalanche. It's time to move forward. May the Lord Almighty go before your battles.